You're listening to Nuestra Gente with Linda Parra.
Amigos oyentes, tengan todos ustedes muy buenas tardes. Bienvenidos una vez más a Nuestra Gente Radio Show con Linda Parra. Hoy tenemos otra interesante entrevista, como siempre lo hacemos en esta jornada de entrevistas con los candidatos que están corriendo para esta elección final del 3 de noviembre. So we are here today with Earl Mack, and as he's running for sheriff, for Lucas County Sheriff, telling us about yourself.
Okay. Well, I have 39 years of law enforcement. I was born and raised here in Toledo, Ohio, throughout the inner city. Lived a little bit out in the county. My grandfather had a 17-acre farm that, as a child, we helped farm, and so we went to Toledo Public Schools and graduated from Scott High School. And right after graduation, I was drafted into the military, U.S. Army, and I served in the U.S. Army during the Vietnam War as a combat medic with 2nd Evac Hospital. And after leaving, or after my discharge, I decided to go into law enforcement.
Okay. Let me tell you a little bit in Spanish, okay? Él dice que ha vivido aquí en la ciudad de Toledo. Tiene 39 años de experiencia en cuanto a law enforcement. Estuvo en el Army. You went to the Army, right? We're going to start with the first questions. So, what are your strengths? ¿Cuáles son sus puntos fuertes para esta campaña?
Okay.
For this campaign.
Yes. Well, my strengths have to do with my lengthy law enforcement service. And just to talk a little bit about that.
Yeah.
I was once a police officer, a patrolman with the University of Toledo Police Department. From there, I went to be an agent with the Ohio Department of Liquor Control, where I was stationed in Cleveland, Ohio, for a number of years, doing liquor enforcement, tobacco enforcement, and food stamp enforcement. And from there, I then progressed to a field supervisor over 2 squads of enforcement officers. And from there, I went to be an assistant agent in charge of enforcement operations here in Toledo, Ohio. We were promoted to agent in charge in 1995 over the Cincinnati district operation, which covered about 21 counties. And we worked with every law enforcement agency and those 21 county sheriffs during that time, doing liquor, food stamp enforcement, tobacco enforcement. And then I was able to be promoted to a acting deputy director of enforcement operations for all of the state of Ohio. I was able to come back home here in Toledo as agent in charge of enforcement operations for Northwest Ohio. And from there, how much time do we have?
Okay, just keep going.
Okay. In 2007, I was then appointed Deputy Director of Ohio Homeland Security, which came with a lot of other responsibilities. So during that whole law enforcement career, I was able to work with communities. I'm a community-oriented person because my philosophy is that we can't protect what we don't know, so it takes a community relationship with law enforcement to then know what's going on and to protect that community and allow them the input in that as well. So and as a Homeland Security Deputy Director, which, as I said, it came with a lot of other different responsibilities. I was part of the Joint Terrorism Task Force. I was the Executive Director of the FBI Joint Terrorism Task Force that was led out of Cleveland for Northwest Ohio. But the main thing is my management of people. I always say I never ask someone to do something I didn't do or don't do, and there's accountability. So in law enforcement, there has to be accountability. As I said earlier, I am a community engagement person. I love the community. If you know anything about Buffalo Soldiers, I'm the president of the Toledo Buffalo Soldiers, and we do lots of community service work here in our county. And so that carried with me into law enforcement because, again, as I said earlier, we need that community engagement to do our job and to get the job done right. So a lot of law enforcement there across the board.
Okay, so I'm going to say it in Spanish, but I'm going to resume a little summary of what you used to say. El señor Earl Mack ha sido director, ha trabajado con la policía de la Universidad de Toledo, ha sido director de oficinas de law enforcement, tanto localmente como en el estado de Ohio. Pertenece a un club aquí que está muy relacionado, que se conecta muchísimo con la comunidad. What is the name of the name of the team?
Toledo Buffalo Soldiers.
Toledo Buffalo Soldiers. I would like to enjoy that group one day, or see what you guys doing. I would like to know a little bit more about this group. Y él está corriendo para la oficina para ser el comisario del condado de Lucas en estas próximas elecciones del 3 de noviembre. Como él lo manifiesta, tiene mucha experiencia, ha sido director de todas esas agencias, de law enforcement, como también ha formado parte del FBI en la oficina de Cleveland como director, y ahora quiere contar con el voto de todos ustedes este 3 de noviembre en las elecciones generales para ser el comisario del condado de Lucas. Now we are going to make the second question. Is what have you found to be the best way to monitor the performance of your work and or the work of others? Share a time when you had to take corrective actions. And I'm going to say in Spanish. ¿Cuál ha encontrado que sea la mejor manera de monitorear el desempeño de su trabajo o el trabajo de otros? Comparta un momento en el que tuvo que tomar medidas correctivas.
Is to make sure that our officers have the correct training, reinforcement of that training, policy guidelines, and court guidelines. We talk a lot of times about several points of how police officers should be and how they should do, and I know that our mayor here and the governor has come up with a program, with a points program as to how an officer should conduct themselves.
Yeah, sometimes it's good to get some updates.
Correct. Well, I always say though, because what governs in Ohio, what governs peace officers' conduct is the Ohio Peace Officers Training Commission. So there's specific guidelines, qualifications. We also have guidelines that come from the court system of how to treat citizens. What constitutes a violation of someone's civil rights. Police officers are public servants, and so they serve the public. And so we need to remind them of that from time to time, as well as we need to care for those officers too, because nowadays police officers do so much. They're sometimes they respond to domestic violence. They have to be a mental health person to assess someone's mental health. They have to go into all kinds of violent situations, and they see all these things day in and day out. And a lot of times we don't care enough about our officers that we don't give them that mental health assessment sometimes. And when an officer is involved in some kind of altercation, they should always have some kind of mental health assessment to make sure that they're not overloaded as well.
Yeah.
And then we have to look at the public. See, don't get me started here because we're going to be here all night.
Okay. Yes, it's okay. Go ahead.
Then you have to look at the public, because a lot of times I ask the public, have you looked in the mirror? You have to look at your own actions as to what escalates a police-citizen conflict. And so we have a program that the Buffalo Soldiers conduct quite often during the year. It's called What to Do and Stop by Police. What that program basically says is that comply now, complain later, because you can't win on the street. And then it goes through a PowerPoint that tells what the responsibilities of police officers are, what the responsibilities of a citizen is when they come in contact with a police officer, and the things that they need to do as well, especially when police officers are approaching vehicles or they approach you at night, there's certain things we need to do as well and be aware of. So that program has saved lives. And we also talk to police officers about cultural competency. Sometimes we put an officer in an area that knows nothing about that area. They know nothing about the culture, and it becomes a conflict a lot of times. So on both sides, we need training and we need assessment on both sides.
I think those trainings should be every year, annually trainings,
Right.
to get nowadays to remember a little bit about things that needs to be done and issues that, because it's always issues and new things coming out, and then you don't know how to respond. X situation.
Absolutely. After we talk about those things, we should do as citizens and how we should react to police officers when they approach your vehicle. Because one of the things that police officers watch all the time, because we want to make it home too, is hand movements and things. So we always say, when if you're in a vehicle, and even if you're approached by a police officer on the street, always show your hands, because we don't know what's in your hands. And unfortunately, you see, we just lost Officer Dia not too long ago because the guy's back was to him. He didn't know what was in this guy's hand. When he turned around, the shooting started, and he's not here with us anymore. So people don't know what those officers go through. Unless you were a police officer on the street, and we've been there for 39 years, you don't know what those officers go through, and that's why you must comply. And sometimes I hear this too, Linda. They say, well, Mr. Mack, there's incidences where the citizen complies and something still happens. They still get injured, or they die from gunshots. And the only thing we can say to that is continue to comply, regardless, because if you comply, your survival rate will be a lot more higher than not complying in those situations. A switching of the roles that the citizens can understand how difficult that job is, and it is a difficult job. And it's not to say that police officers get it right every time, because sometimes we don't. And that's why we need training. I always say to all the officers, agents that have worked under my leadership, we need to know 100% of what we're supposed to do, 100% of how to do it. If not, anything less than that is failure. And so that's why it's extremely important to keep training going, ongoing training, reinforcement of training, even in roll calls. You walk through and show police officers what the conduct policies are, and reinforce those conduct policies. And again, on the other side, again, citizens need to understand that, and they need to understand that when we have high crime areas, you're going to see more police officers. You're going to see more police officers doing proactive kinds of things, and so you have to understand that as well.
Yes, it is a risky job.
Correct.
And people have to respect that. So, a mis amigos, estamos acá en Nuestra Gente Radio Show. Les habla Linda Parra. Estamos conversando con el candidato para ser comisario del condado de Lucas, el señor Earl Mack. Una de las preguntas, como les dije anteriormente, es cuál ha encontrado que sea la mejor manera de monitorear el desempeño del trabajo de él o de otras personas, y que compartiera un momento en el que tuvo que tomar medidas correctivas. Él nos estuvo conversando mucho sobre los entrenamientos a los oficiales de policía constantemente.
So as we move forward, if we're fortunate to be your sheriff, serve as your sheriff, we'll have a coalition to take a look at where the jail go. But the first thing we have to do first is make sure that we have our personnel with the right training, the right morale, and the things we need to then put them into a new space or a new jail to do what we need them to do. It makes no sense to have a new jail if the personnel morale is very low, and they're having issues with even hiring at this point, and a lot of folks are working overtime. So we need to fix that personnel problem first before we even look at a new jail. Then we'll talk about a new jail with the employees, with the sheriff employees' input into that as well. There's questions we get about defunding the police. You hear that all the time. Let's defund the police, and things going. You can't defund the police, and I don't. That's a lot of it happens to be emotions.
I do agree with you at that point.
Yeah.
We don't need that.
No.
We got a law enforcement
Correct.
all the time, and we need it. and I
Yeah.
think that they deserve to get paid for their job, for what they do, risking their life every day. So why we need to defund them?
Correct.
It's like as though we're gonna defund teachers in schools.
Yeah.
I mean, those are positions and those are offices that they need that funding.
Some kids go to school nowadays, and parents are afraid of them. Teachers are afraid of kids. Principals are afraid of kids. They're afraid of touch kids and discipline them. And the kids is not afraid of anybody. And that doesn't make any sense whatsoever. That's some of the problems that we see out here as well. So much violence out there because people are so angry. Instead of them talking their problems out, they rather go get a gun or a knife and take that person's life. And so we need to deal with all of that, and all of that. A lot of that has to do with the economic opportunities that a lot of those areas don't have anymore. So as a sheriff, we will be looking at all of those things through coalitions. We'll be bringing people together from courts, from citizen groups.
Thank you.
Thank you for having me
today. You're welcome. You're welcome anytime when you want to provide some information, okay?
All right.
To the community. And good luck to you.
Thank you.
Mis amigos, hemos llegado al final de nuestro programa, que es Nuestra Gente Radio Show, para llevándoles a todos ustedes otra interesante entrevista con otro candidato para estas elecciones generales del 2020. Les queremos mucho y estaremos nuevamente en contacto, ustedes y yo acá, a través de Nuestra Gente Radio Show, para llevarles más información, más candidatos. Ustedes tengan la oportunidad de conocer y escuchar de cada uno de ellos y tengan un conocimiento de quiénes son los que están corriendo para estas elecciones generales del 2020. El próximo 13 de noviembre es la elección, recuérdenlo. Los queremos mucho, gracias por estar en contacto y será hasta una nueva oportunidad.